This is the fourth of a sequence of videos on the graphic system Tkinter/TTK. This video will introduce the idea of an entry box, a way for the user to enter input. But before we do that, let's look at a solution to the exercise from the previous video, that is, a solution to do 5 in Module 6. Here's what we had left over from the previous solution. We had our imports, we have a Tkinter TK object called root, a frame which we gridded, a button which we also gridded, and then way down at the bottom we took that root and ran its main loop on it. To do 5 asks us to make that button respond to a button press by printing hello on the console. To do that, we set the button's command to be equal to a lambda expression whose body is to call a function that does the action, here printing hello. We could have put an ordinary print statement as the body of the lambda expression, as I'm showing temporarily in that green box, but normally what we have as the response to a button press is more complicated than a single statement, so I'm going to call a function. So I'm going to define a function, I'll call it print hello, but you could call it whatever you wish, and I'll make a call to print hello be the body to the lambda expression. So I'll go way down here to the bottom and define a function print hello, just like we usually do, that takes no arguments and prints the string hello. Notice that there are 3 elements here, 3 things. First, we have the expression button square bracket quote command close square bracket, which is our way of telling Tkinter that the thing to the right-hand side of the assignment statement is what to do when the button is pressed. Second, to the right of that assignment, we have a lambda expression that defines what to do when the button is expressed. Doesn't call anything, just defines something. Third, the body of that lambda expression is a function call that runs when the button is pressed. Here that's a function call to the function print hello. Print hello is an ordinary function defined in the ordinary way outside of the current function way down there at the bottom. Make sure you understand all that, replaying the last 30 seconds or so as needed. Let's run our code to show that it works. As you see, every time I press the button press me, hello appears on the console by virtue of that call to the function print hello. I could have defined print hello inside the same function that has the button command statement like I'm showing here, and there are times when that's a good idea, but we haven't done that in this course, so let's not start now. One more improvement that you might have done in your solution, instead of defining a function print hello that always prints hello, it would have been better for me to define a function printIt that takes a string and prints that string, and then in the lambda expression calls printIt with the string hello. If you did any of these solutions, that's fine. Okay, that concludes our discussion of the solution to the exercise in M6 from m4e. Make sure that you have an adequate solution there and that it works. But now let's switch gears to m4e. m4e extends our understanding to show how one can provide input to a graphical user interface. There are many ways to do so, but the simplest is what's called an entry box, where the user types in information into a little box in the GUI. Let's look at the code. The code for main begins exactly as we've seen before. There's a Tkinter.tk object as the root, a frame on the root, it's gridded, and then a TTK entry object placed on that frame. And then that entry box is gridded. Notice, by the way, how I'm defining my variable names to include the type of thing they are. My entry box for an entry, print entry button at line 37 for a button. Follow that style yourself. Let's run the program real quick. As we'd expect, we see an entry box show up, and then below that a button. Anyhow, line 37 makes a button as we've seen before, placing it on the frame with the words print entry on it, and then we define what happens when that button is pressed at line 38. The left-hand side says that what is to happen when the button is pressed is the right-hand side of line 38, namely, and to run an anonymous function, a lambda expression, whose body is to call the function print contents defined below, sending it that my entry box, that TTK entry that is defined above. We grid the entry button, and then as usual enter the main loop, waiting for, in this case, the button to be pressed and the user to type information in the entry box. Here is the same code, but reformatted to make it a little larger. To re-summarize, first there's the entry box constructed and gridded, then there's the entry button constructed and a few lines later gridded, and in between it's command that has as its right-hand side the lambda expression that defines what Tkinter should do when the button is pressed. Here, that lambda expression defines a function that calls print contents, sending it the entry box constructed a few lines above. If we look down a few lines to the definition of print contents, we see that it takes that entry box and applies the .get method to it. That method gets the current contents of that entry box, whatever is currently in it. The code stores that contents as a string into the name contents of entry box, and then prints what that name refers to, namely the string that is in the entry box. Here is a run to illustrate all that. As you can see, every time that we press the print entry button, whatever string is currently in the entry box gets printed. Once you feel like you understand how to construct an entry and how to send it to the function called by a button when the button is pressed, and then how to get the contents of that entry box, once you feel like that, go back to M6 module and do to-dos 6 and 7. Pay special attention to the hint that is in to-do 7. You'll need that hint to be able to accomplish to-do 7, so don't miss that hint in to-do 7. Go ahead and do to-dos 6 and 7 in the M6 module at this time. Then turn to the next module in our series, m4e, which will show a solution to to-dos 6 and 7. But as before, attempt the solution yourself in M6 and get it to work, and then and only then check the solution by going on to m4e.